are live. For those of you tuning in, we thank you for finding us. As this is a relatively new platform, we've just recently moved over from an older platform, and now we're available basically everywhere. So hopefully, you guys will start tuning into us more often, sharing with your friends, your family, etc. And you'll be able to get us on more platforms as we're able to add more platforms over time. As we start this new episode off, this is episode 6 of the Wealth of Health show. We welcome you. We apologize we don't have our intro uploaded to this platform yet, but we will get there. And I just want to point out real quickly that the information on this channel is for educational purposes, and it's not designed to diagnose, treat, or cure any kind of disease. And we hope that you enjoy this show. The name of this show is the Gut-Brain Connection, and how does your gut affect your brain, and how does it help with its development, and etc. So without further ado, let me bring on Dr. Lynn.
Hello, and Dr. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you great.
Excellent, excellent. A new venue, and I love it. I love it. I just got to tell you that we're doing this show on Wednesdays, and during the other days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we're doing the one called Your Daily Dose. And it was intriguing yesterday, Brian. I didn't even get a chance to talk to you, but we have it in a format that we do it on Spreaker, which is amazing. And then it goes out to our other platforms. So after we're done with the show, it's just like it's sent out. And last night, I did the show late because I was gone all day. Did the show around 4:30, 5 o'clock in the evening. And I did just a simple 20-minute show on a subject. And as of 9 o'clock last night, we had already had 96 views, 96 people listening in. And by this morning, we were up in the 150s. So obviously this Spreaker platform is getting us exposed to a lot more people, and our ultimate goal to make this a healthier country. So the more we get this out, the more it's shared, the more we share good health information with people, the better off this country is going to be, and we'll be healthier for it. So I'm excited. I'm just excited to be part of this. And Brian, you've been the brains behind setting up all this IT stuff, and I'm loving it. It's been a struggle, but I'm loving it.
Yeah, we're getting there. But I'm really enjoying it too. It's a lot more intuitive and a lot more, I think, well laid out than our previous platform. I'm not going to mention any names. Don't want to criticize anyone. But this platform is definitely much more versatile and quite expansive, really. I mean, I'm sure I haven't even begun to tap into what it's capable of yet. So we'll get there, though. All right, so today, as I brought up in the intro, is about the gut health connection. Lynn, would you like to give us a little intro on that?
Yeah, and Brian, this is where this comes from. You know this, and I just got back from Pittsburgh. I was up there at my son's and my daughter's, and my son had put an addition on the back of his house and a big deck, and he had decided, since COVID last year pretty much wiped out Christmas celebrations, Thanksgiving, and all the other, that he said, let's get a September get-together to celebrate all the holidays so far and set the stage for moving ahead. So we did. The whole family got together, and I got to see my granddaughter, who just turned 5, and my grandson, who's closing in on 2. But the intriguing thing, the part of this story that's intriguing, is that my granddaughter, who's now 5, extremely healthy. I just put up on Facebook a little picture of her dancing. I mean, this kid is just growing like by leaps and bounds. But she was born premature. She was born about 6, almost 7 weeks early. And for what could be a lot of different reasons. But, when I happened to be in Pittsburgh at the time, because my mother had just passed away the week before. And my daughter gave birth, and I happened to be there at that time, and the baby went into the NIC unit, the infant neonatal ICU. And it broke my heart. because when you go in there and you see these little children, like 2, 3 pounds, that are so premature and their lungs aren't working yet, and there's tubes and there's breathing apparatus and all this, and it's like, oh my God, why couldn't it have just been a healthy delivery? Well, the long and the short of it was she survived that with a lot of prayer and did extremely well. And from the time she came home, from the day she came home, my daughter has had her on probiotics. So she came home after being in the NIC unit for about 3 weeks, healthy, vibrant, came home on probiotics and been on probiotics every day since then. Now, I got to say, as a proud grandpap, that this young lady has a brain on her shoulders, and she has a head on her shoulders and brain galore. She's exceeded every single expectation in school. She's now in kindergarten and actually reading at a 3rd grade level, doing extremely well. Now, is that entirely due to probiotics? Well, let me just say this. An article came out from the University of Vienna, which is when Brian said, what are we going to talk about today? I said, hey, I just got this, just got downloaded. And it says gut bacteria influences brain development. Now, the article talks about extremely premature infants that are at a high risk of brain damage. And we know that. If the child's born that premature, we can't get enough oxygen, enough fuel to the brain, and we can suffer brain damage. So this article talked about research that was done in Vienna, Austria, looking at giving these children probiotics in the NIC unit. Now, they wouldn't allow me to do that with my granddaughter, but here they were doing that. And they said what they are talking about here is what they called the complex interplay, the gut, immune, brain axis. Now, that's parts of the story number 1, Brian. Story number 2 is when I was in pharmacy school. I did some residency work at Magee Women's Hospital in Pittsburgh. Now, Magee Women's Hospital in Pittsburgh was, as by its very nature, just a birthing hospital. And over the years, they've really, with University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, has really developed unbelievably intricate ways of assisting birth. And about 3 years ago, they come up with this ultra sensitive, color enhanced ultrasound that they were able to allow a husband and wife, once they found out they were pregnant, to actually see at 4 weeks of age, after sperm and egg come together, 4 weeks later, see the developing baby. Amazing, at 4 weeks. And the intriguing thing that they did when they developed this great ultrasound is that they said the first thing that develops is God created us. The first thing that develops when the sperm and the egg come together at 4 weeks, first time we get a chance to actually see this, is the brain and the gut. A direct link between the brain and the gut. And the interplay between the brain and the gut continues not just with infants, not with just premature kids, but for me, you, anybody at any age. That in a area now where we've just spent so many shows and so much talk about COVID, comes this article out of the University of Vienna, said, yes, there's a complex interplay between the gut and the brain. And right in between there is the signaling from the brain and the gut that upregulates your immune system. So that if we maintain good gut health, you can keep your brain functioning better, can avoid things like dementia and Alzheimer's, can get your memory better, your focus, your concentration better, and even if it's a child, their performance in school better, and your immune system responds to the positive, so that you can actually support a system to fend off things like COVID or colds or flu or whatever. So that's a long intro, Brian, but what I really wanted to talk about today is I'm going to read a little bit more out of this article, but I want to play off of your cooking expertise to say, how can you enhance good bacteria growth and gut health by picking the right foods and cooking the right foods and doing that in a meticulous way for your family so that this doesn't get to be a task of swallowing pills, but basically changing your habits and your cooking habits and adding certain foods to it that can enhance the gut, brain, immune system link. And I think that's a crucial factor that you don't hear on the news every day, but we're dealing with it today.
Yeah, good intro. I'd be happy to help out. And so let's see. Do you have any thoughts on the types of let's talk age group, I guess, first. Let's say infants then.
Yeah, let's start there because the child just came home. Let's just say from birth to age 6.
Okay.
It's a tough age.
Right, it really is.
Kids get funny about what kind of foods they like. Right. And parents are busy, and McDonald's starts out real soon, and that could be one thing that wipes out your gut health. So let's just talk in this category, Brian, from birth up to about age 6. How could we enhance the gut health by simply adding certain foods to the diet in that age group?
Well, as some adults may know, a lot of good fermented foods are good sources of natural probiotics, but we don't expect to give those to our kids, obviously. And even if we did, then I don't imagine very many would want to eat it or consume it. So a lot of kids like sweeter things, of course, and there's an interesting link to that too. We might get into that another day, but long story short, the brain's fuel, quite literally, is glucose, and kids who are developing rapidly might have a bit of a sweet tooth, and that may not necessarily be a bad thing to let them kind of expand on a little bit. Of course, brush their teeth and things like that as well, but to expand on the sweet side of things, though, it's interesting because probiotics don't really have much flavor, at least that I can tell. I've got a pretty strong palate, and I've never been able to detect a distinct flavor other than maybe just a hint of tartness, maybe just a hint. And so with that said, one of the best ways I've found to introduce probiotics into young ones, outside of yogurt, of course, is to take the foods they like, whether it be, could be strained peas, honestly, could be carrots, it could be applesauce. I know a lot of kids like applesauce. Any natural food that you like for your kids to have, and that your kids enjoy both, you can get from pretty much any health store that I'm aware of, either tablet forms of probiotics, and then sometimes you can find liquid forms that are either flavored or unflavored. And the amount that a kid needs is really quite minimal, but that's up to the parent. Sometimes probiotics can make the stomach a little bit squirmy, especially in kids, especially when they're first being introduced to it. So start slow. But you can add these different things, these different types of probiotics in these different forms. If it's a tablet form, of course, crush it up. And believe it or not, a coffee grinder works quite well for those tablets. I've done that before. Excuse me. So you can take these different forms of these probiotics and incorporate it into these foods that these kids like, and even some foods that aren't sweet. If you have, like I mentioned before, like the different vegetables and things, and if you have kids of the, say, 4 to 6 range that are on more solid foods, and of course, anything past a couple of years ago on solid foods, but if your kid's on more solid foods, then you can actually do things like mashed potatoes. You'd be surprised the type of foods you can incorporate probiotics into that are, I originally in pill form. Capsules work great because you can break them apart and, of course, just dump the probiotics directly into the food, mix it in there. Just one thing to keep in mind, though, if you decide to go this route, is probiotics, similar to enzymes, do not have the greatest tolerance for heat. So if you decide you want to add it to food, and using the mashed potatoes as the example I just gave, they don't really need to be really hot. Not that your kids would probably enjoy it really hot anyway, but lukewarm or cooler if you're going to add it to food. So as a general rule, puddings, natural puddings, the applesauce suggestion, the yogurt, or anything that's on the cooler side is going to be the better thing to add those probiotics to if it doesn't already have probiotics in it. Now, one other thing to mention before I give it back to Lynn is that there are some probiotics, some forms, that will emulsify extremely well in certain liquids. So that said, if your kid likes apple juice, or if they like, say, smoothies, if they enjoy smoothies with you, that is a phenomenal way to incorporate probiotics into their diet, and yours as well, for that matter. And Lynn, I'll send it back to you.
Okay, let me read more from this article so that if people want to know the science behind this, it's coming again from the University of Vienna. It was published in the journal called Cell Host and Microbe, one nobody would ever be able to read because it's intense. It's where research is posted, and it says this: bacteria in the gut cooperate with the immune system, which in turn monitors gut microbes and develops appropriate responses to them. In addition, the gut is in contact with the brain via the vagus nerve as well as via the immune system. We investigated the role this axis plays in brain development of extremely preterm infants, said the first author, David Secchi. The microorganisms of the gut microbiome, which is a vital collection of hundreds of species of bacteria, fungi, viruses, and other microbes, are all in equilibrium in healthy people. However, especially in premature babies whose immune system and microbiome have not been able to fully develop, shifts are quite likely to occur, and these shifts may result in negative effects on the brain. So they go on, and they said this research is going to continue with 2 more studies coming in the University of Vienna. Again, ultimately looking at this, they said, this is the only reason we're able to gain these important insights is the fact that they had partners in the project that were able to allow these researchers to look at premature babies, to look at infants, to look at adolescents, so that they were able to get comprehensive studies of these types of issues. And they talked about something called the bacterium Klebsiella. When that one became overabundant, we ran into problems. Now, Brian, with that, I'm going to go to the next age group, which is 7 to maybe 18, adolescents into teen years. And I want to highlight soured foods, so that, when you look back not that long ago, actually to my grandparents and their generation that raised me, that every year they made their own sauerkraut. They would raise the heads of cabbage, they would chop it up, and they would put a reactant in there where they actually added a bacteria to that cabbage to change it into a soured form, which formed, the sauerkraut that they would love to have canned, so that they were from that generation during World War II where they would can things and have it put aside. So, Brian, how could you possibly get a 12-year-old to eat something that comes from a soured background or a food that would have some good bacteria in it?
Well, that's also kind of tough, too, because you're right at that age where they're starting to explore more tastes on their palate. Their palates are sometimes changing around that age, especially through the mid-teenage years. And sometimes that can be a challenge in itself, too. So I would say, before anything, my first thought on this is that I would introduce your kids to new flavors as young as possible, mainly to kind of get their palates used to that prior to them getting into those years where they start figuring out what they like. And the reason I say that, too, is from my own experience, not just with my nephews, but with other kids that I've been close to, kids from friends of mine and things I've kind of been around and influenced in different ways. And one of those ways is to introduce food, because I love food so much, and I love to see kids explore that interest in all the different type of flavors that exist out there. So actually, before I go on to case in point, my youngest nephew, he's 10 now. I started him, or gave him his first taste of fish when he was like 3 or 4. His mom hated it because she hated fish, but he loves it now to the day and looks forward to it. So that said, too, both my nephews, the older and the younger, love Reuben sandwiches. Not the traditional Reuben, but the way that I make them, which is a Reuben Cuban, or some people call them a Reuben Cubano. The way that thing is put together is it's real similar to a Reuben in that you're going to use either a rye, or you can use a rye, or you can use really kind of bread you really want, but rye is preferable. Good, it's a good grain, good bread. And then instead of corned beef, which is traditional for your Reubens, you would use chicken instead. I use typically like a lightly grilled chicken or a pressure cooked chicken that still has a lot of its moisture and stuff in it. The sauce is pretty much the same. You can use your Thousand Island or whatever, or your actual Reuben sauce, which I think in some cases is French dressing, but or your homemade on that note too. But whatever dressing you want that creates the taste that you like. Swiss cheese, of course, or whatever your preference, but Swiss is the traditional. And then your sauerkraut. Now, there's a little controversy here on people that cook these sandwiches or prepare these sandwiches. Some people use coleslaw mix. Others use sauerkraut to keep to the traditional Reuben, and that's what I prefer is the sauerkraut, largely because of this topic we're covering today, in that in addition to being a very good, healthy sandwich for kids and adults alike, really, you also have this introduction of sauerkraut. So when you're giving kids sandwiches, like whether it's for school or whether it's for just their daytime lunch break, whatever it is, if they've already been introduced to some sour foods, sauerkraut of course being one of them, then this is a great way to introduce them to sour foods. Now on the same token, if you want to do, say, sourdough breads, those aren't quite as those have their own set of benefits. It's a little outside of this topic, but Lynn can elaborate a little bit more on that if once I pass it back to him. But sprouted bread's another one. Sprouted bread's really good, and it has a lot of good whole sources to it as well. The only catch to that is it has to stay cold. But moving away from the foods now a little bit, you have teas, kombucha teas. You have various types of fermented drinks that you can incorporate into your kids' lives as well to complement their dinner, complement their lunch, even breakfast in some cases. Like the kefir. That's what I was trying to think of. Kefir for breakfast is a good option. This is an acquired taste, though. So I go back to my previous comment that this is something that you're probably not going to be able to just drop on your kids and say, "Here you go, have fun, enjoy." It's not not typically the first thing they're going to want to reach for if they've never had it. So I reiterate again, go back, start as young as you can, and if they have even an inkling of interest in wanting to try new things, by all means, please explore that. Don't suppress that, because that can really, really help in the development of their palates later on, and including some of these foods that some people might even consider exotic. For the purpose and the sake of health. So with that, Lynn, I will pass it back to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to go through. I pulled up a couple lists off the internet of the best foods for maintaining gut health. And, as Brian just said, fermented foods top the list, obviously. But once you start growing good bacteria in the gut, it's really important that you feed the bacteria. And believe it or not, one of the best ways to do that, and again, your kids would probably love it, a banana a day. Bananas are one of the best foods for supplying your gut with inulin, a fiber that helps good bacteria to grow. The other ones that are really good, your leafy green vegetables and the high fiber that's there. As Brian had mentioned about rye, whole grain breads. Whole grain breads, not whole wheat, whole grains. Body can't break down fiber on its own. When it gets to the large intestine, gut bacteria get to work fermenting it. This creates acids that feed cells in your intestines while helping to protect your gut from harmful bacteria. So whole grains make that world. Polyphenols, the compounds in foods, the colorful foods that are rich in polyphenols. Teas, coffee, red wine. Now, again, as adults, very easy to do. Polyphenols in green tea, phenomenal for helping to promote the growth of good bacteria. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, worse foods for good health. Worse foods for good gut health. Topping the list, red meat. Red meat can trigger the growth of gut bacteria that lead to clogged arteries. Stick to lean protein sources such as fish or your plant proteins like beans and tofu that Brian had said. The other thing that's bad, fried foods. Fried foods are already on the not good for you list, but again, with those heated oils that soaked into fried foods will damage healthy gut bacteria. Next, foods with antibiotics. How can you tell if somebody has an antibiotic in it? Well, farmers often treat animals with antibiotics to keep them from getting infections. So again, knowing where your meats are coming from is a crucial factor. Here's one a lot of you aren't going to like, but it's alcohol. If you're a heavy drinker, that is going to disrupt the bacteria in your gut and help bad bacteria to grow. It's a big factor. And then this is the one that kills me oftentimes is caffeine. Coffee, soda, even too much chocolate can up the caffeine in your body, which ramps up your intestines. The excitement in the digestive system often can cause a disruption of the good bacteria. So there's a list. And again, I think if we apply that to all of us, you can make some substantial changes to be able to enhance good gut health and move ahead to enhance brain function and your immune system function. So, Brian, I think, that pretty much says what we wanted to. I don't know that we have to go into any more detail than that, but again, if you're starting out and you want to look at a probiotic, we really like our Ultra Probiotic. We have a number in the office, but our Ultra Probiotic and our standardized probiotic that we just call probiotics, our private label brand, again, very, very well done, and use that inulin as a food to keep it alive on the shelf. So if you want more information on either one of those, or you want to know some more in-depth look-see at your diet, or more tips, maybe you want to set up a time with Brian to discuss that. Call our office at 678-228-8900, 678-228-8900. Our website is the Nutrition Shop, SHOPPE.net. Okay, Brian, take it away and give us a good close here.
Yeah, all the information Dr. Lynn just gave is also found on our Spreaker homepage. All the links are there, as well as our phone number information, which you can also access on our website, at the top of our website. And in closing, I would like to say that all of the foods and the different things I mentioned from that 7 to 18 age group, well, really any of them apply to adults as well. So explore that. There's a lot of different fermented food options out there, a lot of different ways to incorporate into your diet. Look into some recipe forums. I'm going to be adding those to our website soon as well for that very purpose. So those of you who are loyal subscribers and those of you just chiming in can go to the website and check out some of these different recipes that we're talking about, some of these different foods and things. But the one thing I'd really like to touch on, since this is a topic about food and being able to get the right type of foods and good wholesome foods for the gut, I'm a huge fan and supporter of local co-ops, and I don't necessarily mean your local REI, even though I do like them. I'm talking about farm co-ops. So for those of you out there who are interested in looking into a co-op, I would highly recommend you look in your area and look into how much a membership costs. Every season, as part of your membership, you will get a part of the bounty, part of the harvest. And if it's something that you and your family or friends think they might enjoy, go in on it together. Collaborate on it and pool your resources together, your finances together, and get a lot of the season's harvest and then split it among you. But there's a lot of different ways you can do that too, so I'll just leave it at that. Explore your local farmers and support your local farmers, and in most cases your local farms especially, are going to be very conscious of of their animals and how they're treated and various other things. You can go. Actually, you know what? I'll put it on the website. There's a phenomenal website specifically made to help people find local co-ops in their area, and I'll just add that to the website. They'll make it our website, and they'll make it easier. So, with that, I say thank you for joining us today, and God bless. And we look forward to seeing you guys next week.